back.
Former NBA player Sebastian Telfair is recounting his prison stint alongside Sean Diddy Combs. Telfair was just released after serving time for a probation violation related to a healthcare fraud conviction. He told TMZ, quote, "I couldn't imagine how Diddy felt, but Diddy's holding it down. He's doing what he's got to do. Diddy was living a rock star life, so I'm glad he's going to get the time to just relax. Diddy's in good spirits. He's still Diddy." Combs is serving out a sentence of a little more than 4 years on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. But his defense team is now working to get him released. So let's bring in Mercedes Colwin, criminal defense attorney. Mercedes, really good to see you. It's been a while. As part of the argument that Diddy's attorneys are making, they are saying, quote, and we'll put this up, defendants typically get sentenced to less than 15 months for these offenses. Even when coercion, which the jury didn't find here, is involved, he sits in prison today serving a 50-month sentence because the district judge acted as a 13th juror. Where do you think this goes?
Alicia, always great to be on with you. Let's be very frank about this case. You can't unsee what you saw, you can't unhear what you heard, and you can't unremember what you read. And it's clear that that judge took certain things in consideration that were part of the evidence, and it is permitted under the Mann Act. That is the psychological harm that took place on these victims. We're talking about Cassie Ventura and the other victim who actually testified as Jane. And those two recounted the horrors of what they went through under this type of influence, this type of sexual exploitation. So it's going to be a real stretch. And do I applaud the defense's attorney? But by the way, these are great defense attorneys. They're gifted. It's clear that they've got a great bench. And they're trying all they can to try to overturn those 50 months. But it's going to be a very hard process for them to get to that. Because under the Mann Act, the judge can take into consideration the harm that was inflicted upon those victims. And so therefore, they might be arguing, and not only are they arguing that there was this departure from what should have been imposed on Sean Combs, they're also arguing, which is a real stretch, that these freak-offs and these hotel sexual encounters were really amateur pornography that were done, and this was during the consenting adults. It was consensual. So they're not only making this argument that there was this departure by the judge and should have been into consideration. The second part is the fact that there's also a First Amendment violation, because really this is really a freedom of expression. These individuals were consenting.
Now, one thing that I see here that, they're going to look at, like, Diddy is trying to downplay what happened. Even though the situation with Cassie, him beating her, happened years ago, they did admit that as evidence to show, like, the character and the things that he was doing. So, when his lawyers is trying to, like, downplay it, they're going to be looking at that as well. And the best thing, Diddy can do is try to appeal so he can look towards situations coming up in the future. When you appeal and, you putting modifications and you're doing different things to try to change whatever the verdict is, it takes time before you get a decision. So it's something to look forward to. We all see that. But accepting ownership is important, and that's one thing that I had to understand. Even if you might not felt like you did what they convicted you of, when you get convicted of something, though, they want you to accept the ownership, because if they feel like you don't accept the ownership, they really try to, like, give you more because they want to make an example, because they feel like you didn't accept the ownership. And even if you do accept it, sometimes they might act like you didn't accept ownership for the situation.
But at the core issue is whether these women actually consented to that. And the prosecution that will be arguing against this appeal, they'll say Sean Combs used his fame, his fortune, and his wealth to sexually exploit these women and transfer them from state to state. That's the evidence that came in. That's the evidence that compelled that jury to convict Sean Combs. It's going to be a real stretch to get to overturn that sentencing, especially when you look at the guidelines on itself under the Mann Act. It's between 70 and 80 months. The judge gave 50 months here. So this type of these arguments, frankly, if I looked at my crystal ball, it's going to fail.
You know, Mercedes, and as I was reading this, first of all, let's start with the First Amendment argument here, because to me, just as a layperson, sounded like some stretch. Because we recorded it and it became entertainment,
right.
That is now a First Amendment situation that they're dealing with. I mean, from a legal standpoint, what do you think?
That's such a great question, Alicia, because that's really at the core of it. That would mean that anybody taking their phones, if they're literally capturing a crime taking place between a victim and an abuser, you're saying that that's somehow amateur photography and that should be permitted under the First Amendment? No, I mean, the arguments are a stretch. I applaud them for trying to do so. It's obvious that they're trying to get this at all odds to try to get this overturned. But at the end of the day, you have a jury that said that what took place between Cassie Ventura, Jane, and Sean Combs and all of the other enablers, the participants in these freak-offs, these hotel stays, this sexual exploitation, was sexual exploitation and it was non-consensual. So the fact that you have non-consensual acts that are being memorialized doesn't make it suddenly be First Amendment and therefore should be protected activity. It's a stretch, and frankly, it will, and in my humble opinion, will likely fail.
Okay, and I also thought it was interesting that his attorneys are also going after the Mann Act itself, an attempt to kind of to weaken this law. What should we be considering when we look at that?
Well, it's interesting because the Mann Act is you rarely hear about it, read about it. Rarely those are the charges, but the prosecution, the prosecutors really took into consideration all of the acts that could fall into lesser included crimes. They were obviously looking for the really big crimes, sex trafficking being one of the highest crimes that they were trying to seek a conviction on. That failed. So these lesser included crimes are ones that had to be considered. Those are the ones that the jury obviously felt was enough evidence to convict Sean Combs on. And yes, they're trying to attack but it's on the books. This law is still good law. It has not been overturned. It is not deemed unconstitutional. Those laws are permitted to be used and charged against individuals who the prosecutors in their discretion really do feel that a crime has taken place. So it's on the books. Can't say it's unconstitutional. The argument, if his defense team really feels that there's a problem with the Mann Act, you can certainly lobby against that act and have it rendered unconstitutional. But it's historically sound, it's constitutional, nothing's been overturned. It's still good law on the books, and prosecutors can use it under their discretion.
Yeah, and notable that the Bureau of Prisons has said with good behavior, Diddy could get out in about 2.5 years. Mercedes Coleman, so good to see you. Thank you.
Exactly.
Hey, listen. When you go to trial, though, right, and you fight your case in trial, you got appealing rights. So it is Diddy's right to appeal his conviction. You know, a lot of people are scared to go to trial. They end up taking a plea and they don't want to fight. Diddy did fight his case. You know, even though he got found guilty of a lesser charge than the RICO, he got an opportunity to appeal it. And anybody in this situation would appeal the conviction. You know, that's his life. You know, he got to stand on the decisions he's made. And I'm sure he's hoping that, you know, he can get it overturned. And who knows? It could happen. It can happen. Either way, you know, it's up to the courts. But anybody, you know, that go to trial, they got a right to appeal their conviction. Yeah. So Diddy put himself in this situation. This is the process. You know, you think that you run the world because you got money? Nah. Them people run the world. You know, the system is designed to grab you up when they want you. You know, they make a new law all the time. You know, they attach you to laws that they want to attach you to, you know, and people are breaking the law all the time. It's just when they want you, they're going to associate you with different laws. They knew Diddy was doing these things that he was doing for a long time. It's just Diddy had to sit down. You know, brought him back to reality. You don't run nothing. People got to understand that. You don't run anything. You do what they allow you to do. When they shut you down, they shut you down. Yeah, so Diddy put himself in that situation. You know what I mean? Make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, man. And yeah, he ain't got life though. So hopefully he'll wake up, do things different. If not, they got bed space for you. That's one thing people got to understand. They got bed space. They never gonna run out. They'll move you around if it get filled up somewhere. So maybe he learned, you know, or maybe he might think that he gonna come home and get revenge. If he got that mind state, he in trouble. Straight up. Yeah. Some things you gotta let go. For real, for real. Some things you gotta be willing to say, all right, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna let that go. It was a bad situation I went through in my life. Let me move forward. Put that in the past and keep it going. You know, because he still got paper. So, you know, but sometimes too, people need a lesson because Diddy was out of control. He might needed this lesson. You know, could have got worse. You know, he needed the lesson to teach you. You know, they belt the ass, brought him back to reality. Sit him in there with some other people that, you know, in his mind, he would have said, man, I'd never be around these jokers. And they sit you in there, you got to sit there and eat that food with everybody else. When you got that paper, it's crazy. Bring you back to reality. Straight up. Yeah, he learned the hard way though. He definitely learned the hard way. You know, one thing about people is a lot of people can't learn the easy way, what you telling them. Because I'm sure people been told Diddy, man, you got to slow down, bro. Take it easy. Slow down. You doing too much. You doing too much. Slow down. He probably said, man, I got this. You know, talking slick to people. But he had to learn the hard way, man. Straight up. He had to learn the hard way. For sure. He had to learn the hard way. He said, I still think he not ready again for society. Hey, if he ain't ready and he get out here and get the plan and think it's a game on probation, oh yeah, you ain't gonna be able to buy your way out of nothing because you know well, them probation officers, they gonna do their job. You know, ain't nobody losing their job. That's what people gotta understand too. Ain't nobody losing their job because you talking about paying them out of something. So it's like now people are thinking a little better, honestly, because you taking a short payout from somebody to sweep something under the rug and you lose your job, your career for that. Both of y'all still going to end up getting caught. It's not worth it at all. I don't think it's worth it at all. You know, I think it's real senseless to do certain things. So yeah, hopefully he'll say, hold up, I made a mistake. And then he had time to clear his mind. You know, hopefully he ain't been in there trying to get high You know, some people be in jail, they be trying to get high all the time. And things is going through the prison. Straight up. Yeah. All types of narcotics go through the prisons. So hopefully he ain't in there trying to indulge, you know, altering your brain when you need that time to clear out, you know. You literally need that time to clear out. When you clear out, it give you some clarity. You know, you ain't got no toxins in your body, and it's like you can sit there and really reflect, and you don't have that daily running responsibility. When you sitting in jail, you sitting there, it's like a lot of clarity. You know, everybody can't come to you for something. You know, you get that peace of mind too. It's a stressful situation, yes, but you do get a different sense of peace if you've been running the street hard. If you've been out there running the street hard, it's like a instant stop. Straight up, all right, slow down. Chill, relax. For real. He said, and that shit would probably follow you for the rest of your life. Shit get real. Yeah, shout out to all y'all, man. Facts.